Texas is 695,000 square kilometers, bigger than France, bigger than Spain. But most people only ever see the corridor between Dallas, Austin, and Houston. In this video, we go beyond the oil fields and the cowboys to a town bought for $30,000 in 1970 by a man who declared himself mayor of a free state of mind, to a border town where the bars sat on one side of the street and the gas stations on the other because each side ran on different laws, to a ghost town that once produced 40% of all the mercury in the United States, where Mexican workers died in their 30s from poisoning, and to a town that the federal government deliberately drowned under 30 feet of water in 1937, a town that only reappears during severe droughts, tombstones still rising from the lake bed. Make sure to hit that subscribe button because more journeys across forgotten America are on the way. Number 10. Luckenbach, the three-person free state. Deep in the hill country of Gillespie County, 50 miles north of San Antonio, sits a 9-acre patch of land that is technically a town. Luckenbach was founded by German farmers around 1849 and peaked at 492 residents in 1904. By 1970, almost no one was left. That year, the owner put a newspaper ad that read, "Town Pop, 3 for sale." A local rancher and former All-American swimmer named John Russell Hondo Crouch saw it and bought the entire town for $30,000. Then he declared himself mayor. He appointed a minister of foreign relations. He named a sheriff. He declared Luckenbach a free state of mind and started hosting satirical events like the Ladies' State Chili Bust. In 1977, Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson released Luckenbach, Texas. It hit #1 on the country charts and stayed there for 6 weeks. Suddenly, thousands of people were driving to a town with a population of 3. The dance hall still hosts live music every weekend. D. The sign at the entrance still reads, Population 3. Most ghost towns die quietly. Luckenbach was saved by a man who turned it into a joke nobody wanted to stop laughing at. The next entry is also famous, but not because anyone planned it. It became a ghost town because of where a border happened to fall. Number 9. Glen Rio, the town that ran on 2 sets of laws. On the Texas and New Mexico state line, 73 miles west of Amarillo, lies Glen Rio. Founded around 1903 by the Rock Island Railroad, its geography created one of the strangest arrangements in Texas small-town history. Deaf Smith County on the Texas side was dry, so alcohol sales were illegal. Quay County on the New Mexico side was not. Meanwhile, New Mexico charged a higher gasoline tax. The result was surreal. Every bar was built on the New Mexico side of the street. Every gas station was built on the Texas side. The post office was in New Mexico. The train depot where mail arrived was in Texas. Mail had to be physically carried across the state line every day to be processed. During the Route 66 boom, Glen Rio thrived. Portions of the 1940 film The Grapes of Wrath were filmed here. In 1973, Interstate 40 opened and bypassed the town by a few hundred yards. Glen Rio died almost instantly. By 2000, the census listed 5 people. The Texas Longhorn Motel still stands, its sign reading "First in Texas" or "Last in Texas," depending on which direction you are driving. Bullet holes pockmark the stucco walls. Rattlesnakes nest in the crevices. And the next entry was never an ordinary town either. It was a place where a saloon keeper declared himself the law. Number 8. Langtry, where a bartender became the law west of the Pecos. Where the Pecos River meets the Rio Grande on a limestone bluff in Val Verde County lies Langtry. Population today, about 14. In 1882, this was a railroad camp filled with, in the words of one Texas Ranger, the worst lot of roughs, gamblers, robbers, and pickpockets I ever saw. The nearest court was 200 miles away at Fort Stockton. Into this vacuum stepped a 57-year-old saloon keeper from Kentucky named Fantley Roy Bean. On August 2, 1882, the county commissioners appointed him Justice of the Peace. Bean had no legal training. He owned a single law book, the 1879 Revised Statutes of Texas. He held court inside his saloon, the Jersey Lily, named after a British actress he had never met but obsessively wrote letters to. His gavel was a .41 caliber pistol. When a man fell off a bridge and died, Bean found $40 and a gun on the corpse. He fined the dead man $40 for carrying a concealed weapon and pocketed the cash. When an Irishman was tried for killing a Chinese railroad worker, Bean dismissed the case, ruling that his law book contained no specific prohibition against killing a Chinese man. In 1896, when prize fighting was banned in both Texas and Mexico, he staged the World Heavyweight Championship between Bob Fitzsimmons and Peter Maher on a sandbar in the middle of the Rio Grande, where neither country had jurisdiction. Fitzsimmons won by knockout in 1 minute, 35 seconds. Judge Roy Bean died in 1903. Lily Langtry, the actress, finally visited his town in 1904. He had been in the ground for 10 months. The next place has nothing to do with personal eccentricity. It was built as a laboratory for total corporate control. Number 7. Thurber, the company town behind the fence. 5 miles west of Fort Worth, in the northwest corner of Erath County, sits what is left of Thurber. In 1888, the Texas and Pacific Coal Company bought a coal deposit, fenced off the property with barbed wire, and built an entire city inside the enclosure. Schools, churches, saloons, an opera house seating 650, a 200-room hotel, an ice plant, and the only library in the county. To get in or out, you had to pass through a guarded gate. Armed guards restricted access for labor organizers, peddlers, and anyone not approved. At its peak, 10,000 people lived inside the fence. They came from 18 different nationalities. The company paid them once a month in company scrip, discounted at 20% and redeemable only at company stores. In 1907, Thurber became one of the first 100% closed-shop union towns in the United States. When Erath County voted to go dry in 1904, the company built a saloon called The Snake just across the county line, with what some claimed was the longest horseshoe-shaped bar in the world. 25 bartenders moving 7 carloads of beer a week. Then locomotives converted from coal to oil. The miners were no longer needed. By 1927, the mines closed. By 1935, the commissary locked its doors. The population today is 48. A single iconic smokestack still rises next to Interstate 20. Thurber was the largest company town in Texas, and when the company decided it was over, the town had no say. The next entry was also abandoned, but its rebirth involved 3 Germans and a very odd real estate transaction. Number 6. Lobo, the ghost town for sale. Between the Van Horn Mountains and the Wiley Mountains in southern Culberson County sits Lobo. The town was built on top of the Van Horn Wells Aquifer, once the only water source within a 100-mile radius. Founded in the 1880s as a railroad watering stop, Lobo peaked at around 100 residents in the mid-20th century. Then the aquifer started running dry. By 1991, the last resident had left. In 2001, 3 artists from Frankfurt, Germany pooled their money and bought the entire town for a reported $20,000. Their plan was a bohemian retreat, hosting experimental film festivals called Desert Dust Cinema. They spent 20 years digging new wells and putting roofs back on the buildings. In 2023, approaching age 70, Alexander Bardorf and his partners listed the town for sale at $100,000. Prospects visiting had to sign liability waivers warning about rattlesnakes, open septic holes, and African bees. Buyer proposals included a kangaroo farm, an escape room, and a super powerful radio tower. The town sold in October 2023 to Dennis and Bonnie Berry, a couple from Corpus Christi. They have not revealed their plans. Lobo has now been founded, abandoned, rescued, and resold 3 times. Somewhere in that desert, the ground is still keeping score. The next entry is a town with fewer than 2,000 people that draws thousands of visitors every year for something no scientist has ever fully explained. Number 5. Marfa, the town where the lights do not stop. At an elevation of 4,785 feet, in the high Chihuahuan Desert of Presidio County, stands Marfa, population 1,788 as of the 2020 census. The nearest commercial airport is 3 hours away. In 1883, a young cowboy named Robert Reed Ellison was driving cattle through Paisano Pass east of town. He saw a flickering light in the distance and assumed it was an Apache campfire. When he investigated, he found no ashes, no fire, nothing. Other settlers told him they saw the same lights regularly, and no one had ever found a source. 143 years later, thousands of people still drive to a roadside viewing area 9 miles east of Marfa to watch the same phenomenon. The Marfa lights appear as colored orbs, white, amber, red, blue, sometimes splitting, sometimes merging, sometimes holding still, sometimes moving in straight lines across the desert flats. They have been documented by World War II pilots who tried to chase them from the air, by university physics students who studied them for 4 days in 2004, and by James Dean, who during the filming of the 1956 movie Giant kept a telescope in his hotel room to observe them every night. The Texas Department of Transportation spent $720,000 in 2003 to build an official viewing area with restrooms, binoculars, and interpretive plaques. Scientists have offered explanations: car headlights refracted through temperature gradients, atmospheric mirages, ball lightning. None of them account for every sighting. A town of fewer than 2,000 residents has built an entire identity around something it cannot explain. The next entry is a town built around something much darker that worked in the ground below it. Number 4. Medicine Mound, the village beneath the Sacred Hills. Between Quanah and Chillicothe in Hardeman County, in the rolling plains of North Texas, stand 4 Dolomite hills rising abruptly from flat prairie. The Comanche held these hills as sacred ceremonial sites for generations, believing the stones possessed healing properties. Around 1880, white settlers founded a small farming town at the base of the hills and named it Medicine Mound. At its peak, it had 500 residents and 22 businesses: a bank, a pharmacy, a hotel, a cotton gin, a school. By the 1920s, it was a regional trading hub for ranchers across Hardeman County. Then, on March 21, 1932, a fire broke out. Within hours, most of downtown was destroyed. The town rebuilt partially but never recovered. The school closed in the 1950s. The post office closed not long after. What remains today are the Hicks Cobb General Store, its walls mostly intact, the W.W. Cole Building, which once housed the bank and pharmacy, and an old gas station with rusty pumps by the road. Behind all of them, the 4 Dolomite Hills rise exactly as they did 500 years ago, watching over a town that came, burned, and disappeared in less than a century. The next entry is the most famous ghost town in Texas, and the one whose population was built on a kind of work that killed you. Number 3. Terlingua, where 40% of America's mercury came from. In Brewster County, near the Mexican border, between Big Bend National Park and Big Bend Ranch State Park, lies Terlingua. The name comes from the Spanish phrase tres lenguas, meaning 3 tongues, for the 3 languages once spoken here. In the mid-1880s, cinnabar was discovered in the hills. Cinnabar is the ore from which mercury is extracted. In 1903, a Chicago industrialist named Howard E. Perry, who had never set foot in the area, incorporated the Chisos Mining Company. He ran it from his Chicago office using telegraphed production reports sent twice a week. By 1905, the town had 1,000 residents. Production peaked during World War I, and by 1922, Terlingua produced roughly 40% of all the quicksilver mined in the United States. Mercury was essential for explosives, batteries, and lamps. The company owned everything: the store, the doctor, the school, the post office, and the mansion Perry built on the hill, overlooking the whole operation. The town was rigidly segregated: one side for Mexican laborers, the other for Anglo employees. And the work was slow poison. Mercury vapor cut workers' lives short, many dying in their 30s or 40s. Between 1919 and 1941, the company produced 39,094 flasks of mercury. In October 1942, it filed for bankruptcy. By 1994, only 25 residents remained. Today, Terlingua has around 170 people living among the ruins of the Perry Mansion and the old commissary. Every November 2nd, thousands of candles are lit at Terlingua Cemetery for Dia de los Muertos. The graves are marked by wooden crosses, piles of stones, and bottles placed as offerings. Many hold miners who died a century ago from a job they took because it was the only job available. The next place was not destroyed by industrial decline. It was destroyed in a single weekend. Number 2. Indianola, the port city that the Gulf of Mexico erased. On Matagorda Bay in Calhoun County on the Texas Gulf Coast, there used to be a city called Indianola. Founded in August 1846, it quickly became the second busiest port in Texas after Galveston. Through this port, tens of thousands of German, Polish, and Czech immigrants entered the United States between the 1840s and 1880s, many continuing inland to found New Braunfels and Fredericksburg. By the 1870s, Indianola had more than 5,000 residents. It was the county seat. It had a planned railroad to San Antonio, 2 banks, and an elegant brick courthouse. Some historians believe it could have grown as large as Houston. On September 15, 1875, a powerful hurricane struck. The storm surge flooded the streets. When the wind died 2 days later, between 150 and 300 people were dead. Only 8 buildings were left undamaged. The town rebuilt on a smaller scale. Then, on August 20th, 1886, a Category 4 hurricane with 150-mile-per-hour winds made landfall directly on Indianola. The storm surge reached 13 to 18 feet. Only 2 houses survived. A fire broke out in the middle of the hurricane and burned what the water had not destroyed. By 1887, the town was officially declared dead. Today, if you drive to where Indianola stood, you will find a small marina, a historical marker, and a cemetery. The streets of the old city are now underwater. The courthouse foundation sits about 300 feet offshore in Matagorda Bay. At low tide, parts of it are still visible from a boat. Everything else has been taken by the Gulf. Indianola was not abandoned. It was erased. The last entry was also erased, but it happened because someone in Washington decided it had to. Number 1. Old Bluffton. The town the federal government deliberately drowned. In Llano County, about an hour and a half northwest of Austin, there used to be a small town called Bluffton. Founded in 1852 by a settler named Billy Davis, it took its name from Bluffton, Arkansas, the hometown of his relative Isaac B. Maxwell. By the 1880s, Bluffton was a stop on a stagecoach line between Burnett and Llano. About 50 families lived there. A cotton gin, a hotel, a saloon, a blacksmith, a school. Pecan orchards grew along the Colorado River, and the community made its living harvesting pecans and growing corn and cotton. For 80 years, Bluffton lived quietly. Then Washington got involved. Construction of the dam began privately in 1931, but stalled during the Great Depression. In 1934, as part of Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal, the Lower Colorado River Authority was authorized to complete the Buchanan Dam on the Colorado River. The dam, finished in 1937, would generate hydroelectric power and control flooding. The newly created Lake Buchanan would cover 22,000 acres, and it would flood completely the town of Bluffton. The Lower Colorado River Authority began acquiring the land that would be submerged. Families were offered prices many said were far below fair value. In cases where families refused to sell, the agency condemned the property and took it anyway. Residents had to move their homes. They had to move their graves. They had to move the remains of their ancestors to higher ground before the water came in. Some relocated to a new Bluffton, 7 miles west of the old one. Others left the area entirely. Then the dam closed. After completion, fall rains dumped more than 20 inches of water across the region. The lake filled in months instead of years. Some residents were still living in their homes when the water reached their yards. Old Bluffton has sat under 30 feet of water for almost 90 years. But every few decades, the drought comes. In 1984, the lake dropped low enough to expose parts of the town. In 2009, it dropped 26 feet, and the ruins re-emerged fully. Archaeologists from the Texas Historical Commission excavated what they could. Visitors drove across the exposed lakebed and walked among the foundations of homes their grandparents had lived in. Tombstones rose from the cracked mud, rusty iron tools, a cotton gin, a bank, a hotel foundation. Then the rains came back. The lake refilled. The town disappeared again. It is down there right now, waiting for the next drought. No hurricane destroyed Old Bluffton. No fire burned it down. No economic collapse emptied it out. A government agency decided it should be underwater, and the water came. The families who built this town were told their community had to die for the greater good of Central Texas agriculture and power. Millions of Texans depend on Lake Buchanan today. But beneath its surface, there is still a town. And the families who were forced to leave are still there too, in a cemetery that comes back to the surface every time the sky forgets to rain. Texas has been holding out on us. From 3-person towns run by self-appointed clown princes to submerged communities that re-emerge during droughts, from bartender judges who find dead men to mining towns where mercury killed workers in their 30s, this state is full of places that defy easy explanation. If you have visited any of these, tell us in the comments which one surprised you the most. And if we missed a strange Texas town that belongs on this list, drop it below. Subscribe for more, and we will see you next time.